everybody, welcome back to my new and improved shop. I am so excited to bring you this video today. I get a lot of common misconceptions with this. People keep saying, oh, I didn't give any plastic straws when I did the drop-off because I didn't think you could recycle plastic straws. You can't recycle plastic straws. You know, California did that whole thing with the paper straws, and I'm here to tell you today that that is not true, not in any way, shape, or form. Plastic straws are made out of polypropylene, number 5, as well as bottle caps and food containers. There's a whole lot of things that polypropylene is made out of. So today I'm going to show you what I'm making with polypropylene. All right, so here we are back at my oven. I didn't have enough straws to do this, so I'm going to be mixing it with other polypropylene. But these are the plastic straws I'm using. I'm not entirely sure what brand they are, but they were recycled, so we're going to make use of them. So the first thing I want to do is these are going to be molded into my little compression thingamajig that you'll see here shortly. But for now, I'm just going to show you how I'm going to melt these. So I'm putting the straws down first because I want that to be the first thing that you see with this piece that I'm making. Oh, oven's preheated. So I'm taking all the plastic that I've got in here, and this is a little bit of mix of everything. I love the Daisy sour cream containers. They have such a depth of color with all the blues, and it's really good stuff to use for polypropylene. So not a sponsored video or anything. I mean, Daisy, if you feel like sending me a whole bunch of sour cream, I would not complain. But so I've got little pieces of a Daisy sour cream container, some other kind of yogurt container. I don't know if it's Daisy or not. And then a bunch of the rings around plastic bottlenecks. Blue, I would assume this is Pepsi, maybe. I don't know. But we're just layering that on top of here because I want a mix of the blue and the white. And I love all the different color blues in here. It's really going to mix well together. Unfortunately, polypropylene does not mold well like HDPE does as far as picking it up and kind of doing some stuff with it. It's very sticky. So we're gonna have some fun with this today though. So this is gonna go in the oven at 400 degrees for about 7 to 8 minutes until it's melted enough to add the next layer. All right, so while the plastic straws are melting, I also wanted to show you guys what I'm doing to the shredder. So if you don't follow me on social media, my shredder decided to wheeze its last breath a few days ago. And I'm waiting to hear on a grant from the Nebraska Recycling Council. I'm hoping to get a really big, nice shredder that is going to give me no trouble in the future because modified paper shredder just really doesn't cut it for a whole lot of things. There's lots I've got stored away that I just can't shred up. But in the meantime, I did decide to invest in another one. And I bought the same brand, Ativa, it's called. I was really impressed with, that thing took everything that I threw at it. It was, if you remember the shredder, the really ugly looking one from the last Sword in the Stone video. But this is what ended up happening to it. I took it apart to see if I could maybe fix it, but these little gears got pretty chewed up and then just started slipping, and there was no saving it. So I ended up investing in a new one. This one cost me $170. It's a 12 sheet maximum, but I did like the fact that it's a continuous run for 20 minutes when my other one was 10. So an upgrade for sure, and so far it's working out pretty okay, but the problem is this access hole up here. It's just I'm gonna say that's maybe a 1/4 inch. I can't hardly fit anything through there. So I have to take off the lid and modify it to be able to bend it to my will. So let's have some fun. All right, so as you can see, I've already put some plastic through it, and like I said, it's doing pretty well, but I need to take this top off, this lid, to be able to access inside. And don't worry, I'm not gonna be asking for a warranty from these guys. I know that I am definitely not using this for its intended purpose, so just so we're clear, if something ever happens to this thing, it is on me. All right, now before we dive into the dangerous part, we're gonna add the next layer of polypropylene together. This is what it looks like so far. It doesn't look like much, but I really love the way the colors are blending through here. All right, layer number 2. And then the third layer will just end up being the rest of this and the straws. Okay, that disconnected. Now what? Ah, there we go. Looks pretty similar to the old one. All right, I'm just gonna get in close so you guys can see what's going on. This is the gears that went out on my old one, unfortunately, but the motor looks good, and it's neat that this one actually has a fan, which is cool. Helps keep it nice and cool. But anyway, so this is what I'm doing over here. So these two guys right here are the sensors that when a piece of paper passes through, it breaks the beam of light and lets the sensor know that there's a piece of paper in there. So basically, like I said, I have to take the sensors out and basically trick it into thinking that there's always a piece of paper in there, so it constantly runs. It's either off or it's on, because this whole stopping and starting thing is just not working out for me. All right, sorry if you're not one of those people that likes to jump around in movies and see one thing, then see another. Yep, that's just kind of who I am. Figure I better keep myself busy while the stuff's melting anyway. So I'm just adding the last of the straws in here, and then I'm just going to top it off with all of this just to kind of tie in the color together. All right, and because I have to work quickly, I'm just going to explain what's going to go on before I actually do it. So this is my mold. It's just made out of little 1x2s and a 2x4, and then this little piece just inserts into here. So when it's full of plastic, this little piece will sit up here like this, and then when I put it in the compression mold, it'll sink it down to where it's level with the rest of the outside of the boards, and so it'll give me a consistent piece. I'm hoping this will be enough. As I'm looking at it, I'm not sure that it will be, but we will see, and hopefully I can just trim up all of the pieces to make them all look the same, and you'll see how that's going to go shortly. All right, now realistically, I wouldn't have to take this bolt out if I didn't want to. However, because I'm gonna be drilling all around this area, I definitely wanna get every wire out of the immediate vicinity that I can. I'd also like to make it abundantly clear that I am not telling you to do this. I am just showing you what I am doing. Which, be smart, don't be like me. But I needed plastic shredding, and I needed not $2,000, so there we go. Put those up and out of there, and then I'm just using a little bit of painter's tape to cover up the sensors. Way up here and out of the way of my dremeling. It don't gotta look pretty, it just gotta work. Hey, look at that, ABS. Okay, I just pulled this out and I gotta move quick, so I'm gonna do my best to explain what I'm doing here. So, the stuff sticks like crazy to the parchment paper. So it's not going to do exactly what I want it to. It's tempting to peel it away, and it's just sticking like crazy to my glove. So what I do is I try to smush it around best I can under the parchment paper. All right, because I didn't quite put enough plastic in there, And in the compression machine, it'll work, but it's just gonna be so much better if I do it this way because I'm gonna get a better press out of it. I could deal with it being just a little bit too thin. I can't deal with it if it has air bubbles or weak spots. So I'm just putting some basic wood clamps on either end and tightening them down each little by little. Until they're nice and snug. And then I'm gonna take this to my freezer and put it in my freezer because it cools down a lot faster that way. And if you demold this while it's too hot, it warps it. And that I don't want because this will eventually go through the planer. So I'm gonna stick this in the freezer and let it cool off for a little bit. All right, and just so you guys know, it works just like this. I'm gonna show you how it works. All right, so it will not work without the drawer in. And then once I turn this switch on, it constantly runs. Okay. And we're just gonna throw a couple of pieces of the polypropylene in here. Make sure to keep your fingers back. Don't stick them in there. Alrighty, and there you have it. Alright, so let's see how this turned out. This has been in the freezer for about 15 minutes. Now we're ready for demolding. Oh boy. Definitely too thin. Alright, so not as bad as I thought once I have all the paper off. I really love all the different color blues and how they just kind of weave into here. You can even see the lines from the straws. So with this, I'm going to clean it up on the planer so I get a flat surface to work on. I already did yellow and green. I have not planed the yellow one yet, so I think that's what I'm going to do next. The blue isn't half bad, actually. The yellow is thinner than the blue is. So, but the green one came out okay. I wasn't happy with the caps. I left them whole, and I don't like the whole spotty look to it. So, I'll probably stick this side to the outside so that you don't see that. But, and then I chopped a little piece off because it was giving me nothing but trouble in the planer. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna get that through the planer and clean up the edges and see what that looks like. Alright, so for some reason my camera was not cooperating, but what I basically did was I took this double-sided sticky tape for outdoor carpets and applied it to the flattest side of the piece, which would have been the side that was in the bottom of the mold. The reason I'm doing this is because when I send this board through the planer, it needs a minimum of 15 inches of length, and this piece is not 15 inches in length. So when it goes through, I'm just going to set it to the depth to just skim the top layer off of this, and then yeah, everything should work out great. Alright, it skimmed a little bit off the top, but I think I'm going to drop it 1/8 of an inch and take a little bit more off. Alright, so there it is, pretty flat. I did not realize that I had so many air bubbles in here, but it's at least flat. So now I've just got to flip it over and do the exact same thing to the other side. Alright, didn't really take too much off the top, so we're going to drop it another 1/8 inch. That is looking fabulous. Alright, so let's see how this came out. Yay! Let's see if I can get it out of here. This side isn't as flat, but when I put it through the planer, I'm sure it'll be better. All right, so here we've got all 4 of the colors all laid out, and then they're all pre-marked and ready to get cut on the scroll saw so that they're all 6 inches long and get rid of these dead edges, but I think they came out pretty nice. I did make a change to my plan though. Originally these were supposed to be the legs, but in order to get a good attachment to here, I think that these will do better off as the brace is in between the legs. So I think I'm gonna make those out of wood. But here is the top that I did. I just did kind of a multicolored palette here, and I put it through the planer just the same as I did these. And unfortunately with polypropylene, I mean, these turned out pretty well as far as the brightness of the color. But when I wanted to sand this super, super smooth, the colors kind of bleed together and it turns a little more muted and matte. So it's not exactly ideal, but it's definitely an interesting blend of colors and kind of just offsets the very bright primary colors of these. So I really enjoyed it, and I'm really happy with how this turned out. For this, I did it a little bit differently. I just took it up through the grits of sandpaper up to, I believe, 1500 grit sandpaper. So, but this is about as shiny as I could get it. Unfortunately, polypropylene does not sand very well because it's such a soft material. But let's take these over to the bandsaw and get them cut off. So that worked out fairly well for my first time. Couple of things. One, I did notice that when the bandsaw started to heat up, so this was the last one I did, it started to heat the plastic up too much and it started to stick. So it gave me a little bit of trouble with that. But thankfully, polypropylene is soft enough to where you just take a knife, you can clean that right up just with a knife. So I'll work on that and clean up the edges a little bit on this one. The other thing I did notice too, if you can kind of tell here, this cut was not perfectly straight, simply because the piece was so tiny, and when the blade starts to drift, if you've never used a scroll saw before, I definitely looked up some videos on how-tos beforehand. Scroll saws do something called blade drifting, where the blade bends and you have to kind of adjust your piece accordingly. So I'll just shave off with this. I'll just shave off a little bit until it kind of matches up, because this thing does not like the belt sander. So here we go. We've got these pieces, and now let's move on to the legs. All right, so I had this old closet rod sitting in my pile of scraps, and it's 1 1/4 inch wide, and they're not the prettiest cuts, but they're gonna get sanded here anyway. So what I have to do is sand these to a taper so that they're more pointed inward and thinner on the top than they are on the rest of the shaft. So let's get started on that. All right, so I kind of just wanted to give you guys an update. This did not work out. I drilled the holes too small, and I had trouble figuring out what I was gonna do because nothing sticks to plastic very well as far as glue goes. So I'm doing some research on some better glues that when I get a mold that I can pull these legs out of already round, and I don't have to put them on the lathe because they wouldn't come out very even, because that's just, you know, the way I roll. So I did this with the little stool. I glued them in with a piece of plywood that was cut to match the size of that, and drilled the holes through at the proper width, glued them in, and then as soon as that sets up, I'm going to add a little more around the inside here to kind of fill up where it's gapping at. But got a couple of bricks on it to give it some pressure on top, and because of all the messing around I did with this one, it ended up being a little bit too short. So I'm gonna measure that when the whole thing is together and figure out what length I need to cut all of them at to match and to all be level and even. So this is what I got so far. I would have liked to have made the entire thing out of plastic, but you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is learning about all this either. And I know a lot of people will cut and edit the videos and just make the right one and only show you that. But I'd like to show you my mistakes so you don't make the same mistakes that I did. So I'm gonna give this overnight to set up, and then we will tackle it again in the morning. Little pieces like this and the shavings that came out of the planer and off the lathe will melt down again perfectly. However, I did not realize the flaw that came with that plan. Alright, so this piece is the piece of the melted shavings that came off the planer and pieces that got cut off on the squirrel saw. I did not realize, okay, so I swept these up off the floor. I swept the floor before, and I swept these up into a container after. And I was very careful about making sure there was no little pieces. I mean, I couldn't help the little dirt bits and particulates that were in there, so it didn't turn out very well anyway in that aspect. But what turned out even worse than that was the fact that somehow this piece of copper wire that I have no idea where it came from, where on earth it came from, I have no idea, because I haven't pulled copper wire off anything in quite a while. So I don't have any idea where this came from, and somehow this ended up going through the planer. And I don't know if you guys have ever worked on a planer before, but it did not appreciate that very much, and it chewed up my blades. So I got that all taken care of and fixed up, but I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to add it to my brand new addition, the Wall of Shame. The Wall of Shame is dedicated to each of my pieces that have failed.
Shame. 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 Shame.
This piece turned out much nicer, super smooth, a little thin for my taste, but after all this testing and all this fun, I'm starting to run out of polypropylene. So let's get this thing put back together. The sawdust is killing me. As you can see, I'm using some French's yellow mustard right along the inside of here just to tack these down. I tell ya, nothing works better than mustard at gluing these guys in. Here I'm just adding a glue called E6000 to glue the plastic top onto the whole stool itself. After doing some research on what to use as the best glue to glue this down, I was not disappointed. This stuff works great. Then the wood clamps were added just to make sure that it was completely seated as it dried. You'll also notice the wood clamp down in the bottom right. I ended up cracking one of the little boards as I was screwing it in. Once the glue was dried on the top and on the little board that I had cracked, the project was completely finished. I did intend on finishing more of this project, but as you could see, the gap here, it just became too complicated, and this project was a great learning experience, but at the end of the day, I think I'm going to spend some time and energy focusing on other projects. Overall, I'm not very happy with the finished project. There is a whole lot that I would do differently, knowing what I do now. However, I decided to post this video anyway, because I think it's as important to show my failures as my successes. But I achieved my objective by showing that there could be things made from plastic straws, and the fact that the stool is actually functional. It's a little wobbly and it's a little uneven, but it definitely supports my weight, and it serves the function for me to be able to use it as I'm working on plastic. If you like this video, definitely hit that subscribe button to see more content, and consider supporting me on Patreon so I can keep making more videos.